Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life. I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered why you become ill? Or do you just accept the fact that we get ill? As human beings, we get ill. And have you ever wondered why sometimes some people get serious illnesses where others don't? Well, from my personal experience of working with clients and from my own experience, trauma plays a major part in your illness. I say that because every emotion we experience can be connected to an organ in our body. So if you experienced as a child a lot of feelings of being unloved and rejected and abandoned, there is the potential that your body will cause breast cancer or issues with your breast simply because that's an area where we would nurture and be loved. If you don't experience that, the body knows that and will consequently focus the health issues on that area. Now, there are other parts of your body that can have an impact through lack of love and being abandoned and rejected. However, the ones I want to talk about today, based on the fact that I rarely talk about clients' issues, simply because I respect their privacy and I tend not to remember their stories simply because I don't want their energy within my space. So there's a bit of respect for them and respect for myself. So I will talk about the issues I've been through. And perhaps because I don't ask for much information when I work with clients, I don't know enough about their health issues and their family life because I don't need to. So consequently, being able to dive in deeper to explain something, I wouldn't necessarily have that information. However, I do about myself. And obviously, I know about my family history as well. So I can bring that into any insights I share with you today. So let's look at something as simple as a sprained ankle to start with, because we all can sprain our ankles or any other part of our body for that matter. But I was in the middle of moving when I tripped and twisted my ankle. Now, at the time, I cursed because I was still emptying the house. The removal guys were still emptying what was available, but I was taking stuff into my car that wasn't going to go into the removal van. In twisting my ankle, I dropped my cat, who I was carrying in a basket. The poor love suffered concussion, and she rested for a good 3 days before she even started exploring her new home. So, yes, that wasn't a good move on my part because my poor black cat suffered. But for me, the consequences were that I've now got an ankle that is twisted because I didn't get the chance to rest as I needed to allow it to heal back into place. But that's beside the point. The point I want to make about a sprained ankle is, in metaphysical health, a sprained ankle is about direction, because like our hips, we have to point in the direction we want to go. Our ankles automatically face forward in the direction we're going in. So if you think about it, if I sprained my ankle, what was that saying? That perhaps I didn't really want to take that move? That perhaps the decisions that I'd been making were wrong? And that perhaps I needed to slow down? Because with a sprained ankle, you can only hobble if you can walk at all. And our bodies often use the slowing down, the pausing, the forcing of us to stop as the indicator that we need time to think, to question, and then perhaps to make a different decision. But obviously in the middle of the move, that isn't going to happen. But I'm damn sure that I would have had loads of warning signs beforehand if only I'd seen them. But awareness only comes after you learn something, rarely before. So with hindsight and looking back at that time, I knew I had made a wrong decision. However, the paperwork had been signed for the move, for the purchasing of the new home. So really, I had no option but to follow through. However, my body clearly indicated that this move was not right for me. And I can confirm within a very short space of time, things were going wrong. So that's a sprained ankle. Direction. So if you're feeling pain in your feet, your ankles, your knees, your hips, it could be that you're going in a direction that's not right for you. And perhaps you need to ask yourself a few more questions to get a bit more clarity, to understand how you're really feeling about a move or a decision you've made. So that's the simple one, a sprained ankle. But what happens if you get an autoimmune disease? Now, an autoimmune disease is a clear indicator that you're punishing yourself. There's something you're not happy with, and that you're actually trying desperately hard to make a different decision, a different choice, or to have awareness about something. And in that autoimmune disease, it depends obviously where that disease is in your body as to what it could relate to. And if you think of your body and every part of your body and the functions behind it, what is it that perhaps you need to question? Now, my autoimmune disease meant that I couldn't breathe. It also meant that my body was attacking itself because it believed there was bacteria in it, in places where normally you wouldn't get bacteria unless you have an accident or break something or you cut yourself in some way. So what was my body telling me? Well, the autoimmune disease was very much about not allowing myself to express what I needed to express. I was actually punishing myself for not saying what I wanted to say. So I wasn't comfortable in myself. I wasn't confident of what I wanted to say. Or perhaps I was fearful. If I said what I wanted to say, I would be physically attacked. Interesting. This all started while I was going through my divorce with my husband. And that divorce from a very controlling person with a parent, his father, in fact, who was even more controlling, who insisted on doing things in ways that made matters even worse, was very much about not being able to express what I needed to express in anger. I knew if I spoke up and really said what I thought, it would delay things. And it had taken nearly a year already. So the last thing I would want to do is to actually say something that would cause even more problems. So there I was, suppressing all my emotions, all my anger, all my frustration, my irritation inside of me, instead of expressing them outwards. And it didn't make it any better, the fact that I didn't have anyone really to talk to about what was going on, because I had to step away from my family to protect them. Because my ex-husband-to-be would be the kind of person that would attack them, not physically, but make their life really difficult if he felt like doing so. So the last thing I wanted to do was to cause them problems. So my autoimmune was very much about my body being unable to state what it needed to state. I've got some notes here. And the thing about it was, looking back, was the fact that I was not allowing myself to be supported, to be loved, to be encouraged. Instead, I just kept everything inside. I'd allowed everyone else, especially my husband, to walk all over me. That autoimmune disease became even worse when I become involved with my partner, because I wasn't allowed to express what I needed to say to my husband at the time. And here I was in another relationship where if I really did say what I wanted to say, I'd be threatened. I could potentially be hit. So am I likely to open up and say what I really wanted to say? On top of which, going through a move from my marital home into a flat, having to change jobs at the same time because I'd been made redundant, and then becoming involved with somebody who was physically violent as well as emotionally abusive put so much pressure on my body, the autoimmune disease become even worse. I was finding that the more I had to deal with and ignore my own feelings and stopping myself from expressing them, the more my health deteriorated. Autoimmune disease, as we well know, is the body's way of expressing in a deep way, not just an organ, but just generally overall, that something is wrong in your life. An organ, fair enough, you can look for that purpose of the organ and perhaps understand what the problem is. As I said before, ankles, knees and hips are very much about moving forward. Your shoulders are about carrying the weight of the world on them. You don't need fixing. You just need to acknowledge what you're really dealing with at an emotional level without judgment. So there's no need to blame yourself or shame yourself just because you're ill and you're not able to say what you need to say to deal with all those emotions you're storing within your body. So it's not a case of go to the doctors and get a tablet and be fixed. It's not a case of going to the hospital and having some surgery. It's very much about witnessing what is really going on in your life or has been recently that's been triggered, or perhaps it's something from childhood that is now repeating itself now. And that's the thing. We don't necessarily know our illnesses start when. All we know is that there is an illness, a disease. And when it's an autoimmune disease, quite often it will be tied to anger, to frustration, resentment. And it's tied to how we feel emotionally, whether we are allowing ourselves to say what we need, or have we disconnected from our emotions and we're not allowing ourselves to feel those emotions. We're just keeping them well and truly pushed down and hidden. That is not good. When you suppress your emotions, where can they go? Think about it. When we say something, there's an inflection in our voice. There's a tone. There's a depth to it that perhaps when we're angry isn't there when we're trying to coax somebody. Obviously not, because it's two different emotions. But what is it doing to your body? If you keep stopping yourself from expressing your anger, expressing your hurt, even allowing myself to say no without feeling that I was going to be threatened was hard. And every time I wanted to say no, I was swallowing that no. I was forcing it back to be hidden within me. I was naturally wanting to keep myself safe. Headaches. What's going on with headaches? Headaches can be associated with the electricity in your body. And as a child, I used to get migraines, sometimes through food, sometimes through weather, other times because I couldn't get my way. But it wasn't until I was about 20 that I had my feet massaged with a reflexologist. And as a child, I'd had to suppress my emotions. Or I didn't have to, I'd chosen to suppress my emotions because my parents didn't tell me they loved me and they didn't show love. So how was I supposed to know what love was? So there I was wanting to be loved, but not receiving love. And I was holding everything in. I couldn't cry because I didn't understand when I was hurting what crying was about. I wasn't to know that if I cried, I'd be held, because that didn't happen. So how did I know what love was? How did I know when I was hurting? And this is the thing, as children, we create stories for ourselves. We create habits for ourselves. They're protection. They keep us safe. And one thing, as I've got to the age I am now, is the realization that if I'm not feeling well, I have to ask a question. What's going on with the moon? Because the moon has a massive impact on my life. What's happening in my life now that's making me feel uncomfortable, uncertain, or unsafe? And then answering that question, why am I feeling unsafe? I will often find that the pain I've been experiencing, the feelings that are under the surface waiting to come out, will allow to be released. So if you're not feeling right and you're not sure why, ask yourself the question, what's going on in my life? What am I upset about? What do I need to say, perhaps? Or what aren't I saying? Or if it feels as though it's something that's been around in your life a lot, it's a normal reaction to things that have happened. Like I would be not necessarily upset, but reluctant at times to go and visit family because I knew I wasn't going to have an easy time going. There would always be something that I didn't do right, or somebody else was doing better than me, and then I'd be judged. But I wasn't allowed to say that's unfair. I can do this or I can do that. There would always be a situation where I was in the wrong. And one thing that really stood out for me was when I went on holiday and landed up in hospital with acute appendicitis. Looking at metaphysical health, appendicitis is about anger. It's about the emotions that are consistently a reflection of being demeaned, of blaming, overly corrected, even threatened. And in my relationship with my partner, I was often blamed. I was often criticized. I was often threatened. And if I dared to say anything, I was then accused of being selfish. And consequently, the anger I was feeling wasn't allowed to be released. And then I become frustrated because I wasn't allowing myself to say what I needed to say. So acute appendicitis was a clear indicator that I didn't feel safe, that I wasn't being allowed to say what I needed to say. Ironically, it happened on my holiday when I was relaxing away from the problem. But in being away from the problem, my body said to me, I can now let go of this, hence why I had acute appendicitis. Unlike the autoimmune disease that went on for years and years, the appendicitis was over in about 2 weeks, and I didn't have my appendix out. But the autoimmune disease was just made worse by the fact I wasn't removing myself from the situation. With the appendicitis, I then arrived back in the UK and was able to remove myself from the situation. So I didn't have any further issues because I still had my appendix. But nor did I get any further issues in other ways other than my autoimmune disease getting worse. Because again, that's connected to not releasing your emotions. So what I would share with you is to acknowledge where you are at any one time if you start getting aches and pains. Arthritis can appear anywhere in the body, but it's often in the hands, in the knees, and that's because we don't allow ourselves to move forward or to look at things that are going on in our lives previously and even now that are holding us stuck. In your hands, if you think of your hands, they're the things you grip things with. They're the things, they're the part of your body that touches, that feels, that we use to pick things up, to do things with. And if you consider you've been doing something again and again and again that doesn't make you happy, and you're using your hands to do that, Is it not surprising then that you have issues with your hands? So just look at your life and question, where do you feel stuck? What are you continually repeating in your life that's leaving you unhappy? Or where are you experiencing pain? Or what health issues are you suffering from? And then consider, those health issues relate to what? Even menopause can be related back to health issues that can come from the beliefs you hold about yourself, the emotions that you've allowed yourself to hold on to, or the complex stories you've been told that as a woman you're supposed to go through the menopause and how bad it could be. Because our minds have a great deal of control over our bodies. So if you keep hearing the same thing said to you, your body is going to hear that and it's going to respond. So if you keep telling yourself you're not feeling well, you won't feel well and you'll get worse. You're not necessarily going to get much better if you tell yourself you're well when you're not, because the body is trying to warn you there is something wrong. So regardless of whether it's a health issue or something that is impacting your life in a way that's stopping you from expressing your words of anger, or the doubts you have, or the frustration, or how upset you are, and you're holding things in, just be conscious of the fact that could cause you ill health. I hope this has helped you understand more of how health, our bodies, and emotions have an impact on our lives. Thank you for listening.